Welcome to Live Decoded. Today I have someone who is very, very well educated with me. He has 2 doctorates and a master. With me is John Bukowski, who normally writes fiction books. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you, Morris, for having me. My pleasure.
So I just want to get straight into it because your way of life, your whole upbringing, your whole story is just so unique and about courage and everything. So tell me, how was your upbringing? What is your story and how did you get from science-based to fiction-based?
Well, I grew up in a large family in Detroit, six kids. We didn't have a lot, one TV, one bathroom, one car, that kind of stuff. But I always loved to read. Parents really pushed reading and school in general. Academics were very important. So while I was growing up, I had 3 great passions. One was English reading and writing. Like I said, I've always loved reading. I read since I can remember, spent many a summer afternoon in the library reading books. Second is history. I've been studying military history for 60 years or thereabouts. I hate to say it's a long time. But and the third one was science. And throughout my high school and college, I pursued all those. But when I decided to make my career science, I had to kind of put other things in the back burner. So my fiction writing really is a return to something that I loved before that I had to put aside when I went off to do my scientific studies. As far as I started out as a practicing veterinarian, I practiced in southeastern Michigan for about 8 years. Got a little tired of the stress, all the euthanasias, that kind of stuff, and decided to go back to school and get a research degree. I got a master's and a PhD in public health epidemiology, the study of disease patterns, a lot of statistics and things like that. And I did that in government and industry for about 15, 16 years. And then I left industry and became a freelance medical writer. And from there, I went to fiction writing. So it's kind of a progression. Even during my research career, I found that I was doing an awful lot of writing because, number one, I enjoyed it. And number two, my bosses saw that I could write. And so if they had an important document, they gave it to me. And so that way I've gradually worked through technical writing to more consumer writing, did a lot of consumer writing, and then fiction writing was a natural progression of that for me anyway.
Wow. So just to get it straight, you had 2 doctorates and master, you had everything lined up for the science, the doctor who is doing the science and doing a great new educations, finding out new stuff and everything around it. And you changed directions, something that many people out there most probably wouldn't told you to do or think of themselves they can't do anymore because they're just too old, they're too into their job needs them, whatever the excuse is. Everybody, even though they hate their job completely,
right?
It wasn't your case, but many people hate their job completely and they would love to do another thing, but they never really get over this step. So how did you?
Well, you're very true that people tend to get pigeonholed and then they get what they call it in industries, the golden handcuffs. It's like you want to do other things, but you're making a lot of money. So you're kind of handcuffed and can't. And then a lot of people, when they retire, they have let all their hobbies go and they have nothing to do. And what I was doing when I was doing medical writing, as I said, I started off doing the standard kind of boilerplate writing of taking data and taking a journal article out of it, that kind of stuff. And over time, I did more consumer writing and more creative writing. I wrote some radio scripts. I wrote advertorials. Things like that are a little bit more creative. And I really enjoyed it. And it was kind of a funny fluke that seemed bad at the time but worked out, that got me into fiction writing, was the Great Recession. I don't know if you remember, back in 2008 or so, at least in the United States, we had a lot of people out of work because we hit a big recession.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of my clients dried up. They didn't have money to pay me.
Yeah.
And so I said, I always wanted to write a novel. And I think that's true of all writers anywhere. You could be a copywriter. You could be a medical writer, as I was. You'd love to write the great American novel. So I said, I'm going to give it a try. I had the time. And so in about 8 to 10 months, I completed the first draft of a novel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still on my computer, gathering dust, and probably always will be. And that's very common. Stephen King calls those trunk novels. They never see the light of day. They're a novel you do while you're learning how to do the craft.
Uh-huh.
But it got me smart. I started writing short stories and more novels, and I got my first one published in 2022. That was Project Suicide. I'll just show you the cover.
Project Suicide. Okay.
Project Suicide. That's checkout time.
I was about to say, yeah.
I got it right here. There's Project Suicide.
Yeah.
And then my second one was in 2023, and I've been on a roll since then. I have currently 4 published and 2 under contract. So that's going to be 6 by the end of next year, I would hope. And about 21 short stories that have gotten published in the various magazines and anthologies and things like that. So I'm building up my resume and having a lot of fun doing it. So you can't argue with that.
That's just so great. I'm getting happy hearing about the story right now. It's getting me dopamine rushes and everything. So since then, a lot happened. Like you said, you wrote a lot of things, and you have this thing where you turn what ifs into scenarios into your novels. So of course, fiction is fiction. It's not what's really happening, but what are those what if questions that you get into in your books?
That's a big thing for writers, is what if. And people always say, where do your ideas come from? The ideas come from thinking, observing, and asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
What if there was a resort town that was terrorized by a giant shark and the chief of police was afraid of the water? Then you've got Jaws. These are kind of what if questions that you ask. For my first book, Project Suicide, which is about a cure for Alzheimer's disease getting perverted into an assassination drug. And my first thought about that, I was actually visiting my father-in-law, who was suffering from a mild form of dementia. And I started thinking about Alzheimer's and dementia, and what it's become a crisis because people are getting older. And I started thinking, hope they find a cure. But what if they find a cure and there's a bad side effect?
Mm-hmm.
And what could be a bad side effect? You could get sick. You could die. Well, just dying is not much of a book. There's not much around that. But I thought, well, what if as you got your consciousness returned and you got self-aware, you also got self-loathing because of a genetic change and led to your own suicide? Now, that is more intriguing concept. People would watch their loved one get better only to kill themselves. But the big what if that turned it into a techno thriller was, what if you gave this drug to somebody who didn't have Alzheimer's disease?
Mm-hmm.
They would kill themselves. Well, that's an assassin's dream. You give somebody a drug and they do it for you. And that's what came up with the idea for Project Suicide.
Okay. So now we got how to get to a story, but just having a great idea for a book is most probably, I'm not a specialist, but I think just the idea is not enough to write a great novel or a great fiction book. So what are some key principles for storytelling that everybody needs to master to write a good book?
Well, I think number one, you have to read a lot. You can't build a house without a blueprint. You can't write well without reading people who write well.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, you've got to write. Many people want to write, but they don't write. And your writing doesn't start off being great. Not necessarily, So the number three is persistence. And overcoming those writer's blocks. A lot of people say, I had a friend who said, I start a lot of novels because it's easy to get an idea and you get that first few pages in your head and you put down 1,000 words, 2,000 words, 5,000 words, and then you hit a wall. What now? And a lot of people stop there. You've got to push through that wall, and you've got to deal with what they call the muddled middle. Beginnings are easy, relatively speaking. Endings are easy, relatively speaking. The middle, where all the stuff happens, the 50, 60,000 words, that's tough. And that's basically what writer's block is running into dead ends and wondering, what am I going to do with this? And a lot of people stop there. So you've got to be persistent. You've got to push through. And you have to know, don't get me wrong, you have to know basics of grammar and structure and things like that. And you get a lot of that from reading and from your schoolwork. I got a lot of it from growing up and parsing sentences and doing all of that stuff in grade school. But you get a lot of it from reading. And so you have to be an avid reader, and you have to write, and you have to be persistent. And as an author, you have to be observant. It's like being an actor. I did a lot of community theater acting for a while. And you build characters by watching people, observing people around you, and bringing them in through you, certain of their traits and stuff. That's how you build characters. And it's the same kind of thing with writing. You observe and you comment on it.
Okay, so there is this thing called AI out there that everybody, at least a lot of people, are afraid of right now. To don't have a job anymore in a few years, or getting jobless, or just losing a job is the main thing everybody's scared about. In the IT jobs, it's a big thing, but also, of course, for the creative ones out there as well. I think we saw that last year, or even though maybe it was this year as well, when there was this big strike, or when every actor in Hollywood stopped acting to just put out a sign that AI shouldn't replace them. But it is, relatively speaking, a lot easier to ask someone out there to write a novel for you with this, the ground idea that probably everybody could come up with. So what is your perspective on the whole AI subject? Will you still write books like you do right now in 5 years, or will you use AI a little bit, or is that just a no-go out there?
Well, right now in the fiction world, by and large, they won't publish things that have been generated by AI. You could certainly use AI in doing research. And matter of fact, if you just Google something, you get an AI summary of the thing you Google. So that's certainly fine to do that. But fortunately, I don't know, this may change in the future, but fortunately right now, computers can't master all the complexities of the human mind. So AI-written fiction tends to be boilerplate, which you would imagine that it would be. It's a computer basically searching for different topics and throwing them together. one would hope that that would be obvious to someone, would not be interesting, because fiction is interesting because of all of the intricacies that we put into it from our thinking. And so right now, like I said, I don't know enough about AI to say what it's going to be. AI would say what it's going to be in the future. But right now, the human mind and the ability to put together a story and tell a tale is much more complex than what a computer can do. It's one thing for a computer to generate an image and then throw some dialogue behind it, as they do with you've probably seen commercials where a famous person's talking on a topic they usually don't talk about, pushing some product, and you realize, wait a minute, it's not really them doing it. It's an AI-generated image, and their words are being put into it. That's easier to do than to do the intricacies of all the nuance that goes into a novel that really makes the person's imagination light up. I don't think computers can do that well yet.
Is it a bit like in a movie, when a movie tries to draw you in and he does it through music, through the color correction, through the atmosphere, pretty much, that the movie tries to get you into the story? How does a book do that nowadays? Because as you said, nobody really likes to read books anymore, pretty much in the mainstream. So how could you make them feel anything when there's still only words? You can't color correct them, you can't put any music behind them to stimulate their brain. So what do you use to keep your readers captivated?
I've heard people lament the loss of radio dramas, because when you're deprived of seeing it, it's more of your imagination brought to it. And books are kind of the ultimate of that, because you can't see or hear it. You have to, it's like a movie playing in your head. And if the author's good, the author can generate those images, sounds, smells, and get you drawn into the story. I think a great example, if you want to go back to movies, is a lot of people say, well, gosh, right now all they're doing is graphics. You know, the more computer-generated CGI they can put in there, the more action, the better. But you can really tell a movie that has a good script, because it does more than just dazzle you. It makes you think, it brings out emotion. You may find yourself crying or laughing or really caring about the characters. And that's what you try to do with writing as well. You paint a picture, you show a movie, but mostly it's about the characters, what their goals are, what the obstacles you put in their way are, how they can overcome those, their interrelationships, their character arc, how they change over the course of the story. All those things are something that you can have in movies too, but it starts with the writing. It starts with a great script. I've recognized, because I'm a big movie fan. If you look behind me there, you see all my books stacked up. Behind those books is a whole bunch of videos.
Yeah,
I'm a huge movie fan. I got like 700 videos, and you can really tell the writing. So acting can be saved by great writing. Bad writing can't be saved by great acting, oftentimes.
Yeah.
And it all starts with the writing. And that's why great directors like Quentin Tarantino, Michael Mann was one of my favorites. They're writers. They start with writing the script, and then they go on to direct the movie. But that's what you can get, is books really bring out your imagination, which movies can, but they sometimes don't.
Okay. So you are also writing a lot of short stories as well. And out there on social media, there is always this buzzword, storytelling is everything. And now, if you only have 1 minute to talk to everybody out there, you put out this video, and you, of course, you need a script, like you already said. You need a good script for this little short video. You need a short story to captivate the audience. What essentials needed to be included in that script, needs to be included in the script?
Well, I mean, if you're talking short fiction, short stories, which is anything from about 1,000 to 8,000-9,000 words, much above that, you get into novella. Below that, you get into flash fiction. But for short fiction, short stories, it's a different kind of writing because everything's abbreviated. It's like the difference between watching a half-an-hour television show and a 2.5-hour movie. You know, there's still like a 3-act drama, but it's all condensed. And for short stories, it's a different kind of writing, but it's a fun kind of writing. And there are still venues out there that want it, anthologies and online magazines and stuff. So I'm not really sure what your question was there.
Just on the baseline, when somebody wants to tell somebody else a story, you are in the front group, you need just on the base of a story, you try to make it as captivating as possible so that others who listen to your story are not getting bored. Just what are things that can help you, just captivate the audience? Or
well, part of it is atmosphere. You know, the atmosphere you create with the story. Part of it is having a great opening scene, great opening line. People say that about books. The 3 things you need to captivate someone's attention is, number 1, a great cover. Number 2, a great back cover blurb where you summarize in a couple of paragraphs the action, what's going on, and then an opening paragraph. That's good. That'll get people to want to read further. And it's kind of the same thing to short story. You captivate them with an initial idea that is, you think of some great opening lines. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. You know, that gets people thinking. And so those are ways to do it. Dialogue's very important. One of my favorite writers for dialogue is a man named Elmore Leonard, and passed away about 10, 13 years ago. And he always said, when you're writing dialogue, read it out loud. If it sounds like it's written dialogue, rewrite it. It should sound like conversation. And I firmly believe that when I'm writing in groove, my dialogue, I am not creating it. I am transcribing what people are saying. I hear it and I write it down. And so dialogue's very important. And these are all things you get from reading. Like I said, you want great dialogue, read Elmore Leonard. Read scripts. Scripts are dialogue and stage direction. That's all they are. I've read a ton of scripts through my acting career. And so that's important, the dialogues. And you have to make, even if it's a short story, even if it's an action piece, people have to care about the characters. Even the villains must be interesting. You know, not necessarily likable, but interesting, have aspects to them so they're not 2-dimensional. So having 3-dimensional characters that people become invested in, and nicely paced. Not a lot of weighted words. As they always say, what is it? Strunk and White said, I think, remove unnecessary words. People tend to overwrite things. And that's something Hemingway, one of my influences, kind of taught you how to get past that and give emotionally laden short sentences that carry impact. So it's no way to sum it up, really, except to say that to learn to write like that with a short story or a longer piece like a novel, you've got to read and just trial and error. Stephen King always says it's something that can be learned but can't be taught, which is somewhat true.
Thank you so much. Where can people go to know about more about your books, to get to know you a bit better? Is there a special place?
Yeah, well, you can go to my website, which is thrillerjohnb.net, because most of my novels are thrillers. You can also get all my books on Amazon by going jbukowskiauthor.com. That'll take you to my Amazon page. Those are the main ways to take a look at my writing, and of course my novels.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. If you just
have a minute, I'll go through my other novels that I have here. I talked about Project Suicide, which is the first one. This is Checkout Time.
Yeah.
Which is about a arsonist who's mysteriously known by his pseudonym of Conrad Hilton. And he's trying to extort money from hotel chains. Pay me or I bomb your hotels. A beautiful FBI agent and a handsome government researcher pursue him until Conrad turns the tables and the hunters become the hunted.
Okay. And the next one?
More recent is The Peeper, which is all about a serial killer who stalks the internet and social media, and a kind of mild-mannered everyman bureaucrat gets confused for him as he goes on social media, and there's kind of this cat and mouse that goes on. And finally, there's a sequel to Project Suicide called Bad Pennies, where a character from the first book comes back and seeks revenge.
Wow. John Bukowski, ladies and gentlemen, wow. This was something. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you so much.